Everyone, thanks for coming. We wanted to get started right away because we have a pretty short session and there's just so much great stuff that I want to cover that I want to make sure I give my little framing piece and then step out of the way so all of these great people can present. And if at any point we're not being loud enough or anything like that, just let us know, because I know these rooms are the acoustics aren't that great. So my name is Kay Steele. I am a program associate from the National Writing Project in Berkeley, but I work to help support the YOUmedia Learning Labs Network. I'll talk a little bit about what that is in a little bit. So like I was saying, I wanted to tell you a little bit about all of this. There are cookies that are circulating around you if you haven't seen those. I think they're all migrated to one table. It's that after lunch thing. Yeah, I wanted to tell you about all this amazing work and research that's come out of this network of librarians and library practitioners nationally. And before we begin, I want to have everyone who's on this team say their name and where they're from, and you can see them all up on this map up here. You want to start?
Sure. I'm Sarah Winchowke, and I'm from the Free Library of Philadelphia.
I'm Cody Allen. I'm from Billings Public Library, Montana.
Mo Yang. I'm from Anythink Libraries from Colorado.
And I'm Corey Whittick. I'm from the Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh.
And that's how geographically dispersed we were all during this project. And the other place that we're missing is the Lynn Public Library in Massachusetts. They couldn't be with us, but we will be talking about their work as well. So our session is called Blazing the Trail, Action Research in Post-emergent Library Makerspaces. So when you see that title, you may have a few questions, like why action research is one thing? What does the term post-emergent mean? Is it a real thing? So we're going to be talking about actually that phrase, or that title of post-emergent a lot this session. But this work came out of a conversation we had about a year ago around the different sets of problems that library makerspaces were really encountering in years 3, 4, and 5 being open. And it was no longer questions like, what kind of 3D printer do we buy? It was more like questions like, what happens when the person who knows everything about the 3D printer leaves? Or questions that might be like, now we have to integrate with the rest of the library system. How do we train 500 people on how to use the 3D printer? Or do we even have a 3D printer? So it was questions like that were coming up. And there were kind of the same kinds of questions that were popping up in library makerspaces all over the US. And particularly within the YOUmedia Learning Labs Network. So if you don't know what the YOUmedia Network is, these are all of the learning labs that are across the US right now. It's a group of about 30 of them. They're museums, libraries, community centers, school settings, and they were all originally connected beginning around 2009, 2010, 2011, around the concepts of Imago and connected learning, and they were funded by MLS and MacArthur, and it was very much the children/siblings of all of this DML work. So now it's 7 years later. So all of these labs, many of which are makerspaces or have makerspaces, including these 4 to 5 up here, are no longer in this emergent phase, right? It's been about 7 years. They are post-emergent. So what does post-emergent look like? And why is this important to identify? And we were also thinking about how can a tool like action research both enable on-the-floor library practitioners as well as administrators and library program directors to really examine their programs as they were 7 years later, 7 years after opening. And from that data, inform the rest of the library field. And then the bigger question is, what does this data show? So we got a little bit of money from IMLS, and I think we have something over here. Oh yeah, here we go. It's IMLS's 20th birthday yesterday, so we just wanted to say happy birthday. And with this little bit of money from IMLS, we came up with a plan to use action research to gather data to test this idea that this thing that we were calling a post-emergent library moment in makerspaces existed. Okay, so what we found, and we'll talk about that a little more in detail, was that action research itself helped us to examine data across labs, and it really provided a window into this idea of post-emergent. And every time we met, we kept on asking ourselves, like, okay, you're observing all of this stuff, so what might this mean? What is post-emergenty about the observations that you're making? So we use the word so much that we kind of stopped seeing it. So every time we had to describe what post-emergent was, other people were like, oh yeah, right, we say like this. So I'm going to step aside and let these labs talk about their findings, but one thing you may notice is that a lot of the themes that they're going to talk about are going to seem kind of obvious. And I'd like to point out that that alone makes those observations and that data almost that much more real and that much more valid, right? And at certain times throughout all of these conversations that we were having, we were kind of commenting that using the term action research or using the term post-emergent and identifying what this post-emergent moment meant was kind of like identifying the term adolescence, right? Like, so we were saying, like, it's almost like not knowing what adolescence is or not having that word to describe adolescence. It's like, you know, at this moment in your life, you're going to be 12 or 13, you're going to notice that you're going to start sweating a lot more. And your physiognomy is going to change. Girls might get their period, things like that. But you're not going to be quite a kid anymore. You're not going to be quite an adult anymore. But you're going to face a whole different set of challenges, right? So our mission was really to be like, all right, there is this moment, and what are the challenges that are going to kind of emerge across all of these library maker spaces? So you're not going to hear anything surprising. It's going to be not anything that you've never heard before. But the surprising thing actually was that the findings were pretty ubiquitous. Two more really quick things about this work. Let me see. Oh, so what we did was we took mentor and administrator teams from across these 5 libraries. We had these little vertical sections of representatives. So we brought a mentor and administrator together. And I'll talk a little bit more about how that ended up being so special and how we realized it ended up being a pretty special way of bringing people together. And then the timeline for the action research was about a year. So we began planning in around late fall 2015, convened in person in January, and then we met every month using Google Hangouts and conference calls. We got feedback and did some reflection protocols and other protocols that the National Writing Project has developed over the years. And then we met up in August to really write out these themes and describe what post-emergent looks like across all these libraries. I think we are starting with Anythink.
So our makerspace, or digital learning lab at Anythink, is called the Studio. And during the creation of the space, we had our teen librarians, some of our tech librarians, and administrators work together to do the planning and implementation of this. Fast forward a few years, and all the original staff members who helped plan and implement our spaces are gone. And I'm the only original one left. And so what we identified were some of the issues that we've had after we got all this cool, bright, and shiny stuff. And it's our people. We don't have the people who are able to support the spaces because our mentors are our librarians, and we had quite a bit of turnover with our librarians. And our artists in residence are really our professionals that we partner with and bring in, but because we had all new staff, they didn't have a way to communicate with these artists anymore. And along with the transition in staff, you lose a lot of knowledge and expertise, and because we are a smaller library district, we don't document a lot of the knowledge from our professionals, and so when they leave, we kind of lose all the information that they had. And so every time we brought someone new, it was like we had to reinvent the wheel all over again. And so we identified certain things that we needed to do, and the biggest part of that was finding a way to onboard new staff as well as our current existing staff that aren't familiar with the program, just so that everyone has a unified vision of what is it that we're trying to do, what is this connected learning thing, what is this Imago, and the big one was, why is this important to our organization? And so over the course of this past year, we worked with our administration and through multiple touch points to just get them to understand like everything that we've learned over the course of like 5 years that we've had the spaces. Like, what is this connected learning? How does it fit into what our programs are, or what our organization's values are? And then, and so by bridging these concepts and what it looks like in practice and what we should expect, we were able to create somewhat of a framework so that way we could then communicate that to our frontline staff who are actually doing this stuff. But in doing that, we found out that, hey, a lot of our staff need this professional development. They need to be able to not have an expert knowledge, but just have enough understanding of what these technologies are, et cetera, in order to understand who to partner with in regards to our artists and residents, and how to connect our customers to the correct media, or yeah. So what we ended up doing with the staff training is we did multiple all-staff trainings where we kind of emulated what this experience would look like when it's delivered to our customers. And the great thing about that is we have a yearly training called TechFest. And so the focus was bringing in all of our artists and residents to kind of host all the training for our staff. And it was different from what we've done in the past because we allowed our staff to kind of pick and choose what they wanted to go and learn. Very similar to what we do with our drop-in experiences with our customers is that they come to what they're interested in. And so it was very drop-in and learn what you want to learn, and give you opportunities to pursue it further outside of just the training. And so the way that we did the learning outside of the training was every week we would have one of our artists come in for roughly 2 hours, either on a Wednesday morning and a Thursday afternoon. And the staff would sign up for the trainings that would focus on music, or would focus on screenwriting or graphic design, et cetera, and it would just be ongoing, just because we realized that it's great to have one big training, but it's not enough, because it's kind of like you use it or you lose it, and if there's no reinforcement, it's very easy for staff who don't do it on a regular basis to forget what it is that we're doing. And in doing that, we realized there was a lot of pressure from our staff to expand our program to their locations, because we have 2 physical spaces as well as these mobile kits that go around. But our staff are, after all the trainings, they became extremely enthusiastic. Like, when is this coming to us? When is this coming to us? And so there was a lot of pressure from our frontline staff to like create something or create flexible spaces for them to utilize this. And so it also leads to self-imposed expectations versus our organizational expectations, with a lot of the work still being clarifying the roles of our staff and their responsibilities, just because with all this training, and we didn't set an expectation, our staff kind of created these virtual or these expectations on themselves, and we had to find a way to support that. And that leads to integrating your program into your institutional structure, because it can't just be that shiny room over there in the library, or it can't be that thing that the teens do over there anymore. It has to be like, this is a participatory or experiential program that we do in our library, and it's something that, regardless of who you talk to, which staff member you talk to, they give you a very similar explanation of what the program is. And so, through all of that, we learned that there's a huge shift in roles. We found that more and more of our librarians were playing this dual role of the one delivering the program, as well as this administrative role where they had to kind of juggle schedules, logistics, et cetera, and it led us to understand that our recruiting and hiring of our staff had to change. It had to be, it's great to have traditional librarians, but at the same time, there's a lot of value in bringing on professionals who are non-traditional librarians. So I know that a lot of our librarians, half of them have a master's in library science, and then the other half have either just a bachelor's or a degree in a different field. And that's fine, because they bring a different dynamic to the team. And they bring these skill sets that can be utilized to help further these programs, because if you're bringing in someone who's not just library, who's like a creative, they have a network that they bring along. And so it's not so much of a challenge to go and try to recruit people when you have staff who can vet for these professionals that we're partnering with.
I think we're going to save questions till the very end, I think, so hold on to them. So I'm Cody Allen, I'm from Billings, Montana. We have the Tech Lab there, which is a digital learning lab just for teens. So where we started, back in 2013, we applied for an IMLS grant to build this lab. It was really serendipitous timing, because we were also in the process of building a brand new library. So we were lucky enough to get this grant and lucky enough to have a brand new building, kind of build it all and get it all put together. So it opened in June of 2014. So we are one of the younger labs, I think, here. But it's been a very interesting couple of years, because it started with 2 Vista volunteers and a part-time librarian running it. So that was the model for the first 2 years, really. The second year, they went down to just 1 Vista and still had that part-time librarian. The librarian was really just there to essentially run the space. I mean, they worked 20 hours per week. They were just there when it was open. They did outreach, but there was real limited in what they could do. And then last summer, that position was ending, and we had decided we're not going to get another Vista. So the question was, what's going to happen? And what the library did, which surprised all of us, was they created a brand new full-time librarian position, which is what I am. And it was the first dedicated teen position at the library. So before that, there was no dedicated teen person there. We had someone doing the teen collection. We had the part-time librarian in the lab, but that was it. So I got hired on. I started last September. Kind of right away, K-Fi approached us to be part of this project, which was great timing for me, so I could kind of dive right in and figure out what's going on. But when we started thinking about, what issues are we facing, what kind of things do we need to address, it was very clear that staffing and the structure of our lab needed to be looked at. Because we had gotten past the initial point of opening up. Mo said like we were still fairly shiny. Kids were coming in, attendance was up. We had lots of cool equipment. We had good instructors from the community coming in, but we had one person. We do have college mentors that we recruit. They volunteer their time in there, so we have 5 of them. They're in there 3 hours per day, every day. This is Ross. He's our mentor on Saturdays. But they're volunteers. They're not paid employees. We can't expect the same things of them as we can from me. So we looked at it, and it's great that now we have this dedicated position to kind of do the teen collection, run the lab, do all the outreach, do the programs. But then we realized also that I'm a one-person department. So what happens when I leave, when I go on vacation, when I'm sick, when I'm at a conference? Or, God forbid, what happens if I take another job? Mo talked about I would take everything with me, all the knowledge that I had. So we sat down and said, what can we do about this? Billings, by the way, is the largest city in Montana at a whopping 110,000 people. But we are one library branch. We're all that's there. We have a very lean staff. I'm a one-person department. Children's is 3 people. It's very small. So we had very limited resources. We had very limited funding. So we decided. We decided to look at how can we make the most of the resources we have without having to go out and try to find more funding, and try to add more positions. How can we make the most of the staff on hand? And that was in response to another issue that cropped up, which is that we had very rapid interest from age groups outside of that teen population that we were serving. We decided to focus on teens because they were just criminally underrepresented in the library. We had very minimal teen programming, but we started this program up, and the preteens, the tweens, the younger kids, they just loved it, and they really, really wanted to come in. They really wanted to use some of this equipment, but we had this big struggle of we want a dedicated teen space for teens, but how do we go about addressing these other issues? So what was post-emergency about all of this was, for us, it was a time to step back, and I don't want to say evaluate, because we weren't evaluating the successes or anything like that, but we were looking at kind of the longevity and just, like I said, the structure of what we're doing. Like I said, those initial goals have been met, it was successful, so what kind of things do we need to work on for the future? So, like I said, all about staffing, and also how do we incorporate ourselves back into the library as a whole? How do we get the community, the other age groups, to see us as an essential service the library provides, and not just this super cool thing in the library that has really cool equipment? So what we did was we developed a core team. That's us there with our library director. It was me, the circulation librarian who does tween programming, and the assistant children's librarian. So what we did, we came together and formed this core tech team, and we kind of did these 3 facets. So the first one was we did it started off as a twice-a-month meeting of a book group. So we would get together and we would read research articles, academic pieces, books, watch webinars, and discuss them twice a month. That kind of took a backseat in the summer. We did once a month, and we're just kind of at that once-a-month phase now. And that was really, really helpful because I was still fairly new. These 2 were still really new to like YOUmedia and connected learning and all these concepts that we're trying to get on board with. So the book group was a good way of, on the one hand, introducing us to these concepts and getting a really good academic understanding of it. And then at the same time, through discussions and through these monthly meetings, it was very, very helpful to be able to constantly be thinking about these issues. Because I'm sure everyone here knows, like, it's just, you're so busy all the time, there's so many things going on, that having these monthly meetings, which is really good for keeping you on track and keeping you focused on kind of the ideas running behind this program. And then, I think the insidious nature is clear. We also had an inlet to 2 other demographics in the library now. So now we had the tweens involved, and we had children's involved. And so that kind of went right into the next thing we did, which was professional development. We took some of this grant money and we paid local professionals to come in and teach the staff on equipment in the lab. And we opened it up to any staff member in the library could come. We really wanted the reference department, the adults to come and learn and kind of bring it to their demographic. But it's open to anyone. Obviously the core team would do that. But the thought being, we want to have this baseline of knowledge, so we did things like 3D design with SketchUp, we did Makey, we did Arduinos, and we wanted to have this baseline knowledge to help the teens and the tweens, and then be able to take that technology out of the lab and use it for other age groups, which ended up being really successful. And at the same time, we wanted to be able to kind of fold it back in the library and let everyone know what we're doing. So that was really good. And we also filmed these trainings, so we had actual resources on hand in the library for anyone who's new or interested can just watch these training videos and get a pretty good lesson on how to use a piece of equipment. And then the last thing that we did was we took the core team and sent them on a site visit to San Francisco. We visited their YOUmedia Learning Lab there. We went to some of the museums they partner with and just talked about that, which it's hard to really quantify the impact of that visit, but it was really, really helpful. And again, just to get out of your bubble, get out of your zone, to see how these same principles that we've been reading about and trying to implement are being done in a different space and in a totally different environment. Like San Francisco is a lot different from Billings. It was just really, really helpful. So that was, again, bringing us all up to that same kind of level. And then at the same time, now that I'm gone, one of them, Cassie, actually the one in the red, is in the lab right now, as it turns out, because I'm gone. So it was a good way of, like I said, using our resources and not having to hire new staff to kind of help us all out. Yeah, so go ahead and move along. So yeah, so what did we learn? Like I said, it was really, really helpful. We learned a ton in a very short amount of time. I think really about 8 months or so of actual research and doing this stuff. There's already been a big swing for the younger kids. What they ended up doing was taking a lot of equipment out of the lab into, we have a story tower in children's for story time. So they set it up and they called it Tech Tower. So they made up a mini tech lab inside of the story tower for tweens over the summer, which was really, really successful. The kids really liked it. And so we're actually really excited to see how that affects these kids going forward, how many of them come back to the lab when they're old enough, how many of them are still engaged with STEAM activities going forward. So it's a really interesting time, and I'm going to look forward to seeing how it plays out. And like I said, it was good showing the library as a whole kind of what we did, but we did run into some issues as well. I mean, we had very low attendance at these things from our reference department, from the adults. So that's one of the things we want to work on going forward as well, is how do we kind of mesh the whole library together. We're doing a good job addressing the younger generations. How do we address that older generation and get them involved too? So that's kind of what the next step is. But yeah, on the whole, it went really well. And like I said, we now have 3 dedicated people in the library before we just had 1. So.
Great. That's great. So, and I'm Sarah Wachowski again from the Free Library of Philadelphia Maker Jawn initiative, and we have been in existence for 4 years now, and we've had several different, we've kind of had some iterations. We started out as a Maker Ed site, and then we had an LSTA grant. We currently have, thank you to Tim and IMLS, we have a 3-year grant from them to do intergenerational programming. So Cody was talking about starting out with teens. We started out with after school kids, and now we're expanding, and that is one of our themes. So just a little bit, where we started is we were doing STEAM programming. We were doing that interest-driven, individualistic kind of thing in the libraries, but we didn't really have a plan or a mission statement to kind of wrap around each. We were in 6 libraries, one of them closed, so now we're in 5 in North Philadelphia. Our focus is really on those individuals who in more impoverished areas and those that don't have access to as much technology. They might not have it in their homes, or in school, or any of those types of things in school. And so that's really our focus. We do on the floor drop-in programming in all of our locations. Some of them look a little different from each other, and so our programming looks different because the libraries are different, the clientele are different. And so it was, how do we make this work across those libraries, even though they're all North Philly, some of them, one is primarily African American. We have 2 that are highly Hispanic. We've got 1 that's Vietnamese. How do we make this work as a single program? And so that is kind of where we started, is what do we do? We didn't know, when we onboard new people, what do we do? And so that is, just take a look at our pictures. That's why I kind of didn't jog. This picture on the left was our first space. So kind of a mess, kind of all kinds of random things. That's kind of how I feel like our program was. Because you just keep throwing things in. And you go, oh yeah, I like this, and I like this, and I like this, and this is what somebody wants to do. And then it looks like this. And so we didn't really have a plan. It's kind of messy, like our middle picture. We're making some slime. They're having a great time. I'd recommend it to anybody. They're having, but it's messy. And what do you do with messy? Also, what do you do with things you have no idea how it works? So somebody made a 3D printer. I don't remember. One of you talked about the 3D printers, and okay, that knowledge goes with whoever. Well, somebody made that, but we don't know how to use it. There was no documentation. Like Mo talked about documentation. So they made it, they knew how it worked, and now we have this thing. What do we do? What do we do? So to move on. So what was post-emergency about that is when our staff leave, what happens? When we have onboard new staff, what do we say we do? What is Maker Jawn? What's Maker? I don't know. So the first thing that we did was this young lady so brilliantly, we didn't tell her anything about this program, what we were doing about this project, but she has makerspace, and then she's got a couple other things. So one of the major things that we did is we did some reflection. At our weekly staff meetings, we had very specific things so various questions, and every week it was take 10 minutes at the end of the staff meeting and reflect on various aspects of our program. So like I had kind of alluded to, was one of the things is a mission. So we spent a lot of time on a mission statement. And so I just want to quickly, I wrote them all down and I don't remember exactly. Like some things like, what are our values? What are our goals? What have we observed in our work that leads us to believe that what we do is important? Why does it matter? What does success for our program look like? That one took some time, and I still don't think we have that one completely. But what does success look like in a makerspace? How could we do what we're doing already that lots of people think is successful better? How can we do things better? And so we took all of those questions and took some time and reflected on each of them and took everybody's input and smushed it all around and put it up on whiteboards and put it up on paper and took pieces and did lots of visual things. And what we ended up with was this. Maker Jawn aims to provide a unique space for community members in North Philadelphia free libraries where self-directed, experiential, and experimental learning is promoted through a focus on creativity, critical thinking, and skill building. Now, like K5 said, it's not rocket science. It's not something that we haven't already thought of and talked about, but we didn't have it for ourselves, for new people coming in. We didn't have a plan, a mission of where we were going to move forward. And so that actually has helped immensely with my staff's morale and onboarding new staff, that it wasn't confusing, or we have more than just the NMLS grants, we have other things that are going on. And so when the staff comes on, they're like, I don't understand this library system, and I don't understand this grant, and why are we doing all these things together? And so that mission statement really brought that together for us. So that was really one of our major focuses of foci along with the reflection piece. We also did some more consistent professional development. I think both of them talked about professional development, imperative. So I guess just kind of, there's another 3D printer thing, Jawn. Anything and everything. Jawn is a context-dependent noun that's Philly-based. So if you didn't know that, now there you go. You can also look it up. You can throw it in there for any noun. But that's what our name is Maker, whatever you want. And so to have that documentation and have things that when people come on, that it's really exciting and specific, and they can jump right in and not flounder so much in getting acclimated to our program. And then, what did we learn? Where are we going next? A couple of the 2 pictures on either side are very specific to 2 grants that we had. The very specific interest-driven types of things that were lacking. And so what we looked for grants, my staff were dedicated, and they really care about where they are and who they're serving. And so those 2, this was a fashion, and I'm sorry I did more working rather than the final product, because that's another piece for us, is it's not about the product. Now, it's great to have a product, and these 2 grants actually gave our staff, the staff in the libraries, like Cody was talking about, getting more people on board. That has been a couple-year process for us, but we're finally getting that. And these 2 projects, the fashion show and the cooking show, were very specific, very finite projects, but it has gotten the library staff on board. And so that is something I was very excited to be able to add to our programming. And then in the middle is some professional development that we're doing across the library. And I am very happy to be able to say is at that table, at that one table, there's a maker mentor, there's a guard, a library guard, there's people shelving books, there's librarians, and there's administrative staff, all sitting at that one table. And so that for us has been, and that's our goal for the expansion, for expanding, these guys are talking about that as well, is expanding, we're building excitement for Maker outside of North Philly. And so the next thing is, how do we make that happen? Because what we're currently doing isn't necessarily sustainable across a 54 library system. So, thank you very much.
Hello. So I'm from Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh, which in size is somewhere between Billings and Philly. We're in 19 locations, 300-some thousand city population, like 2 million in the sort of larger city area. This project for us came along at a really good time because the mentors and I, the program, and I managed the program, it's called the Labs. We were having conversations about, where are we going next, and, how do we sort of take this thing to the next step, like just naturally, because we were hitting that post-emergent spot. We've been around. We just hit 4 years that the program has been running last month. And we have 19 locations, and we're in 5 of them right now on a weekly basis. So they're sort of what you would recognize as a makerspace or a learning lab in 5 libraries, and we push out and do kind of drop-in programming at the rest. But of course, we want to get to a place where that's really a part of library service, and I feel like that's the goal of my position, is to make sure that like when I go away, that the program doesn't go away, that my stepping away from the position doesn't like undo this work, and that people come to really value this as Yelsa has called out, like future of library services. Like this is part of what we do. So just to give you some context, though, where we were before this program, what it looked like. And it's been like a really nice way to begin programming is that we have a workshop and we have an open lab. And the workshop has generally been, sort of drop in like discrete skill building kind of thing. I think it's important to have that community element of the programming. So, it might be intro to photography one week, or like a photo scavenger hunt or something like that. Or 3D printing or something graphic design based. We have a really broad array that we focus on because I like to think that it's analogous to like the library's print collection. People are going to come in with a variety of interests, and we want to be able to speak to that. But that model doesn't fit all people. You might come in with a certain idea and then be like, well, that's not what we're doing today. Today we're doing this thing. And as much as we want that to be interest-based, it's not really a one-size-fits-all. It still serves its purpose, and it's a really good starter model. And then the open lab is, everything's available. The mentor's there. Both of these kind of sessions are facilitated by mentors. And if they do what they want to do, and the mentor assists them in getting there. And really, as we've gone along, that open lab time isn't just that day. It's any time that the library is open after school, and those things are available. And as staff get more comfortable, they work on facilitating that, and basically whenever the library is open. And we're seeing that kind of thing just was naturally happening. So we began to have these conversations. Like, what are the things we want to do? We already work with partners, but often that was a drop-in or a very short series kind of thing too. And we have a great network overseen by the Sprout Fund in Pittsburgh called the Remake Learning Network. This is a regional network of in and out of school partners that are doing great things for youth. And so we have a lot of good connections through that, and people will come into our programming and just sort of offer up with what they do. But it's kind of like one of their standard programs. And there haven't really been consistent designed youth leadership opportunities. It happens in the natural way that it happens, that if you have mentors in a space like ours and the other learning labs, you're going to see peer-to-peer mentorship. It's going to kind of happen naturally in that supported environment. But we hadn't really designed, an example, a real pathway for that. So we wanted to use this program as an opportunity to do that as well. So we stepped back and we thought, in some of these early conversations late last year, what are the things that we really want to address in this project? And Amalia Tonsor, who's one of our mentors, worked most directly with me on this project, but all of the mentors really got engaged in it. What we decided we wanted to see were deeper dives into learning and subjects of interest to youth. So, we've been around long enough that you start to see, if not in our neighborhood specifically, within that neighborhood, the cohort of kids who are coming to those programs, what bubbles up the most, what are they really gravitating toward? And along with that, creating those more structured youth leadership opportunities, and also more in-depth partner programming as well. So we designed, through this Post-emergent makerspaces opportunity, programming that would speak to all those three things. So what it was at our 5 weekly locations, we did what we called Summer Lab Skills Intensives. So these were week-long programs this last summer at our 5 libraries, and they focused on things of interest to youth at that space. So it was songwriting at one, another music-related one, and another one. One was more production-based, one was more kind of lyrics-based. We had a street art one. We did painting, outdoor painting, and photojournalism was the other one. And this was a combination of what we were seeing from youth and hearing from youth, mixed with something that was going on in their neighborhood, and also if we had the right partner or someone in the community who could come in and really do that thing well. So I often think that the interest-based thing is sort of a mixture of the meeting point of the interest of the youth in the space and the interest and skills of the staff in the space, which, we're always learning new things, but it seems to work best when it's where those things hit together. Beachview, which is one of our library branches where the labs exists, Pittsburgh has not great public transportation. Trisha could agree with me on this. And we have mostly buses, but there is a trolley line that is the part that never got destroyed in the 60s, basically, and it goes out south of the city. And the trolley tracks are being torn up, and there's this big project, so the photojournalism workshop at the Beachview Library was documenting this. And so kids were talking about it. It's affecting everybody's lives when they're coming to the library. It's making it more difficult for them to get there. So that project ended up being photojournalism, not because the kids are saying this is really they're all saying they want to become photojournalists, but how do we capture what's going on in the neighborhood, which is what they're interested in, and had some a really great local photographer and somebody from a local paper could come in and help us learn how to document that thing. So that kind of partnership is what we were looking to facilitate. One Hood Media is a really great organization out of Pittsburgh that does music production, but with a real strong social justice bent. And when we did we dig into this programming and we say like, okay, kids really want to record music, they want to learn how to do this. And we have some staff that we brought in as mentors who have those skills. But even if they come in as, you know, gifted musicians and they're good at like facilitating these one-on-one things, like, you know, we don't have the sort of lens on it that One Hood does, who comes in and just like really knocks it out of the park with facilitating like that kind of work around that social justice theme. So, you know, bringing them in and doing a week-long program had these amazing outcomes that we hadn't gotten to in our programming yet. We promoted these programs only in that neighborhood. So I actually got into it with my aunt because she wanted my cousin's kid to get into the one program, and I was like, oh, she lives in the suburbs, it's not like really like what this thing's about. And she was like, you can't get your cousin's kid in the program. I was like, it's not, like this is not what we're trying to do. Like, I'm sorry, I'm a bad nephew. But we really wanted, we didn't have posters outside of that. We, you know, flyered the neighborhood, we had posters at the library. It was just to get those kids who are already coming after school, who are already identifying and, you know, have been like leveling up to get to that next step. So what we did too is we had them apply to take part in the program. If they made it to the end of the week, we capped it at 10 people each location. If they made it to the end of the week, they got a $100 gift certificate. And that's because we really want to respect the time out of school to really take a deep dive into this. And we also understand that a lot of the kids that we see are expected to contribute and, you know, financially. And if that didn't exist, maybe some of them were not going to be able to do this thing. Like some kids actually got special permission to get off of their like part-time summer job because they were coming to do this thing. And if there wasn't that money element, I don't know if that would have worked quite as well. We also hired and this was great to work with our HR department on this, a part-time temporary position of a teen mentor. So there were different applications and processes for those, as well as for the partners. So, you know, what we learned and where we got to, a lot of it, and I kind of straddled the administrative and practitioner kind of role in these. I wasn't leading these workshops, so in this situation I was a bit more in the administrator role. But can sound kind of boring, but some of the best things that came out of this for us was like the creation of these documents that didn't exist in the organization yet. So using MOUs, memorandums of understanding with the partners, you know, usually it's just like a contract kind of standard thing. And I think some MOUs had like come up here or there, but it wasn't a process that existed across the library. So sitting down with a partner and saying like, you know, you're going to do this, we're going to do this, leveraging our strengths and really hammering that out ahead of time just made for really wonderful partnerships in all examples across the board. We had, in most cases, some like nice group photos at the end. All the programs were full. I think there was only like one kid across all 5 that didn't make it every day. The gift cards came a little late, and we heard a lot about that. But just really wonderful things that came out. I mean, there's examples of the paintings that were done, and you know, for that too, like, so the MOU was created. This posting for a teen employee, which we'd never done like as an official job, really was created. We did field trips in some cases. So the main library in Oakland, which is where CMU and the University of Pittsburgh campuses are, is near a lovely park, and to do outdoor painting, we needed to go outside. And, you know, and just outside of the doors wasn't going to really do a whole lot, although we were kind of prepared for that if we had to. But they went over to Phipps Conservatory in Shenley Park, which was nearby, and sat outside and did painting on the days with the kids. So, you know, just all of these documents that didn't exist. And as this programming expands, we want to work with different age groups too. Like, we need a model for how this work is done. And as Kei said, like, a lot of these things across the locations and across the network are common. Like, they're things that we're all addressing and all thinking about and all looking at. And for me, that just magnifies the importance and like the use of the network, because you can then show your administration that like this isn't just us in this situation. This is also happening in Montana and California and, you know, on the other side of the state. Like, these things come up when we take these roles on as librarians. So, you know, we have a lot of kind of big future plans to really expand our programming and these kinds of spaces across our system that I'm really hopeful for, and I feel like this opportunity for us, this project, like really helped us demonstrate like where you can go with this beyond just the like, now it's here and if you want, you have access to it. Like, you know, how can we actually use that kind of stuff to get us to the next step? Thank you.
Did you want to share?
Oh yeah, I forgot. I added more than 3 slides. I was like everyone else. So I just added these because the Sprout Fund did these great surveys this summer with us, and they did these surveys at a lot of summer programs. And we just did the surveys at our lab summer skills intensives, and I thought this would be great because the research and the evaluation piece is not always our strongest suit in libraries. So we got kids to fill out surveys, I think at 4 of the 5, one of them we missed. But I just wanted to run through these real quick. So there were questions, this is Sonia and Marty at CMU that did really great work for us. So this one I wanted to point out especially, so who encouraged you to participate? And this is all programs, means like all the programs that were surveyed across the city, and blue is our programming. So pretty much equal across other, friend, and family. And what Sonia told me when we met the other day was that they were specifically calling out library staff. So to me this shows that library staff is as influential as their family when it comes to like participating in these kinds of things. And I thought that was pretty remarkable to see. And we talk about learning pathways and connected learning and where we want this to go. I know what to do to pursue my interests further. 65% said yes, 24% said like strong yes. And that was really powerful, I felt like. And more with the learning pathways, I developed an interest that I would like to pursue further. Almost 70% yes. And you know, maybe that's fine, they're teenagers, they're wishy-washy. No, but just like really, and across all the programs you see that was really strong, but I was proud that ours like really sort of stood out that way, that to me it just really highlighted and underlined how this deep dive, like how this guided mentor thing, like that, taking it past the drop-in after school element of it, like just really empowered these kids. And is there one more? Is that it? Yeah. And this I just thought was kind of neat too. Do you like art, science, or technology? Kind of like a nice basic question. Across all programs, it was like pretty similar that they liked all 3, with poor science being in 3rd place. But I really liked that, especially in our creative music album one and a couple others, art and technology were like really neck and neck. So you really see that they're seeing that link between art and technology. And sometimes it's like, is it a digital media lab or is it a makerspace, or these kinds of things that I don't really see a ton of value in like breaking apart. And this kind of backed it up in a really nice way. So, okay, I'm done. It's time for...
So when we would get together, we would all, like every month, we were talking about, well, what are these emergent things that we're seeing across labs? So you saw little case studies and you heard the stories behind each lab, but what were the things that we were noticing were really like across the board the same? And there were a lot of them. Let's see, and they are, we'll have to tell you them from memory. And it's handy that we have an acronym.
Slams.
Yeah, but this is not the way it's going to stay forever. I think we're still like kind of like thinking about the actual vocabulary in a snappy way around this, but it comes down to staffing, leadership and learning, administration, mission, and structure, program structure. So are there any themes that you just want to talk about, even from just listening to what everyone is saying, the things that really resonated with you? Maybe I should just type it out. It's slams. It's
The first S is staffing, and then L is leadership and learning. A is administration. M is mission. The last S is for structure. That's both program structure as well as structure within the organization itself.
yeah.
One thing that I remember
Here it
coming
is.
out a lot in our conversations was the idea of a deepening and broadening of our programming. Like that's, to me, of most things, is what the like post-emergent phase is that, you know, we had this period of testing and like feeling really confident about what this was, and now it needs to kind of like expand outward, expand across the system.
Yeah. Expansion seemed to be a thing that was kind of present in all of these categories. And oftentimes, as Mo was mentioning before, you are expected to expand beyond your staff's capacity or beyond your space capacity. And like, what are the implications of that?
And then I think really across all the spaces, during the planning and implementation phase, you don't really think about like, oh, staff are going to be leaving, or we're going to be getting new staff. And I think that's really something in the post-emergent phase that you really need to plan for. Is like, people are going to move on with their lives. They're going to go on to different chapters, and there needs to be contingencies for that, so that the space just doesn't disappear.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, you listen to everyone, the structure that we all looked at was, it was very different in each place, but it was all essentially addressing the same issue, which is, you know, how do we absorb staffing changes? How do we absorb funding changes? You have to have this kind of coherent internal structure that can handle those issues, and that's what really we looked at. You know, and even expanding is the same way, right? How do you expand in some cases out to totally new areas? How do you expand within your own organization? How do you make the most of what you have? And yeah, so I said, like, you know, looking back on it as post-emergent, it's really just looking back at the kind of the core, the joints of your program and what works and what doesn't, what needs to change.
And each of our programs were also very different administratively. So, I mean, you've heard each of us have very different ways that are based on the number of libraries we have, et cetera. Specifically at the Free Library, I had to, because the number of hours that I had wasn't sufficient to run our program. So the mentors got extra duties. I mean, based on their, we spent weeks on that too, just like we did the mission. And what are the roles that need to make our program happen? And okay, who's going to do those? Because I myself can't do all of those things that really need to be done to make a successful program.
And if it wasn't already true, like at this phase in the programming, administrative folks like really have to be involved in moving it forward if it's going to really permeate your organization.
And also, we talk about changing staff. Billings also, we had changing administration during this project, so that was another thing we addressed was how do we onboard administration to this project and the ideas behind it. And we were really lucky that the new guy who has since left again, he was on board from like day one. But yeah, we were ready. We had presentation stuff ready. But yeah, I mean, that's another thing to think about too is staff changing everywhere at every level.
So we have like maybe 2 minutes left for questions. We should also know that we're going to be presenting about this process at ALA this year in Chicago through YOUmedia. So we'll also be there. But we would love to hear any feedback, like what resonated with you, any similarities that you might have found in the spaces that you work in.
Oh, we should also say, folks from IMLS gave us a bunch of the Learning Labs and Libraries and Museums reports. This is the pre-emergent findings. If you would like one of these, they're up here.
Just a quick question. I don't know if it's within the scope of what you guys are doing, but does anything stand out from what you guys have done to manage the need for possibly quiet reading spaces in the library with the Maker Lab space, which can be quite loud and interactive? Or is that even an issue?
The thing that there's one of our branches, the one that my office is out of, I always think of as a good example for this. Like before the space existed there, it was like so quiet that if somebody coughed, like people were like, you know, and then, and you know, this is maybe just the example of that space, but what I've seen is like when there's just that productive kind of white noise, like, you know, productivity going on. I mean, there's not like a bandsaw running or anything like that, but like, you know, like people generally, staff was really worried about it. And then it's basically not been an issue. Like I feel like there's just this nice vibe of like productivity going on, and that's most commonly what I've seen. What do you guys?
With Anythink, our libraries are a little bit different. The way that we've designed our libraries is we've designed it for people, and then books are secondary. And so what we did was we designed it for people, and however many books will fit, afterwards is what we have for books. And so what we do is we create these flexible spaces that can quickly transition to a learning lab or a makerspace or whatever you want to call it, back to a study area based on the time of day.
And what do you use more of?
What's that?
What do you make more use of, the Maker Labs and productive space, or the traditional, picture of what people might think a library is with books and people sitting down and reading?
So it just really varies
Depends
throughout
on the time of day.
Time of day, yes. Just because, again, they're flexible spaces, so that they, like during the mornings, we know that there's going to be more people coming in to do like job searching, or they're there for a quiet space, and so we have more study areas. And then closer to the afternoon, that's when we transition those spaces to be more active.
Thanks.
So this was a great panel discussion. I really appreciate it. Really fantastic. Some of us worried back in the day when YOUmedia expanded that it would be a hot mess and it would be dangerous to try to, blow it out with just that small bit of money. It wasn't very much money, and we were like, oh no, it's all going to crash and burn. And obviously, it didn't. But there's one open question you guys are leaving us with that I kind of want to invite you to look into your crystal ball. The case studies that you've shared with us, it seems like the jury is out on this question. Do the digital media mentoring and support activities happen with the primary leadership of the librarians, or the media professionals and mentors who actually are the artists who are the most knowledgeable about these creative practices? In some of your case studies, it seems like the librarians did a lot of heavy lifting, they got training to do it, and they were driving the train. In other cases, you recognize that actually using the talent of the local artists and communities. Now, if you were to look, and so we don't know, so you guys have shown us the jury is out on where the talent is. I'm a librarian, I teach future librarians. I'm betting on, I want it to be librarians that are running the show 5 years from now, but I'm not so sure I can be that optimistic based on the cases that you put before me. In your crystal ball, is it always going to be a both-and world? Or will librarians eventually acquire the competencies they need to do this well? All librarians.
I think post-emergent is still not, I think that's true that like post-emergent is still not there. But like where I've seen it work best is where it's really like, kind of in the, memorandum of understanding kind of model of like we've worked together to who's best at what thing. And we're still at a place where we need to, one in the connected learning model, like we want to connect with the community. We don't want to like silo ourselves that way and say like we do it better than other places. Like there's some of this content's always gonna like be done best by some outside organizations. However, like as we get to focus, and everyone's talking about professional development, like because that's huge to move this forward. I think we'll keep getting better at this and can do it ourselves in the future. But I don't want to like say that there's not going to be a place for like community members or.
Yeah, and thinking about like the YALSA report too, it's like, is the role of the librarian in the future going to be the person who knows it all and does it all? And do we want to put that kind of pressure on librarians or people in library schools? And in thinking about the connected learning model, like how can you build pathways to really pull on this expertise that's in the community?
The problem is depends on where we bring in library students from, what their backgrounds are, diversifying library students.
And I mean, I feel that it's important. I mean, just like kids, the adage of it takes a village to raise a child. One person can't do it all. And I'll be honest, kids get bored with their parents. And so sometimes it's good to have somebody else, some other face. So it might be that the librarian is a very important person in the library, but it's also very important to have other
the other option there is not necessarily partners or librarians, but having people that are professional, highly respected staff in libraries that are maybe not MLIS people. That's something you see.
And that's a radical thing.
It is.
I just say, it's a radical thing to say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.